Tennis is love, tennis is life, tennis is sex? It's more likely than you think. Whatever it is, tennis is what's on the menu today. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Hello and welcome to Coffee Nick's Movie Picks, a freshly brewed coffee and movie review podcast for you. My name is Nick Delaney and I'm your show host, in-house movie critic, coffee snob, and the guy who in his senior year of high school joined the tennis team only to quit after 2 weeks because he got into a car accident in the parking lot after practice and took it as a bad omen. We don't talk about that. Call us Lord in 2013 because in this episode, we're going down to the tennis court to talk it out like, yeah. And by we, I mean me and rising indie pop star, Zach Benson. In case you couldn't already tell, we're discussing Challengers, directed by Luca Guadagnino. Tennis, can leave you very parched. So for this episode's coffee review, we're sipping on some Jirani Coffeehouse beverages. Please, take a seat, stay a while, and let's talk threesomes over some coffee. Huh? But first, please make sure to follow at Coffee Nick's Movie Picks on Instagram and TikTok, and Coffee Nick Pick on X. There you can find show updates like new releases, coffee pictures, the show's first TikTok video, and much, much more. Again, that's at Coffee Nick's Movie Picks. I can hardly wait to introduce you all to today's guest, so I'm going to get right into it. Today's guest is an up-and-coming indie pop star from Richmond, Virginia, who on May 17th is releasing his second album titled Music for You and Your Friends. Besides being flat-out incredible and iconic, his music plays with and adapts multiple popular genres, offers exciting and personal narrative, and is inspiring to so many adoring fans, me included. Oh, and he's been viral on TikTok more times than I can count for pronouncing the names of Starbucks drinks wrong, singing music to his cat, among other things. I'm delighted and honored to welcome this episode's guest, Zach Benson.
Hey, Nick.
Hello, I've been waiting for this moment. This has been a long time coming.
I know, it kind of has.
Yes. How's everything going besides new album and everything?
It's going great. I feel like I was saying to you before, I've been eating really great food these last 2 weeks, and I am just the most energized I've ever been. So I am pumped up. I'm excited.
Oh, great. This is the perfect place for energy because we're going to be sipping on coffee and talking about some crazy movie stuff.
That.
I'm very excited. So many people, of course, know you as the indie pop icon you are.
Slay.
But when it comes to movies, what do you want people to know about you?
When it comes to movies, people need to know that I love a movie. I love a film. The last year of my life has been me deciding to watch like every classic movie that I've never seen that's just iconic that I've missed out on. Yeah. Let me tell you, 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Oh.
Changed my life.
Yeah.
Singing in the Rain changed my life. Psycho changed my life. Casablancas I did not like.
Interesting.
That's where I'm at.
I also for someone who has a movie podcast, I have not watched a lot of the classics. I actually haven't watched any of those.
Oh,
you just listed off.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, those are my three suggestions. 2001, Singing in the Rain, and Psycho, I think are I'm literally not the first person to say this. I will not be the last. One of the three of the greatest movies ever.
Yes.
That is in the popular canon.
Yes, absolutely. What are some of your favorite modern movies?
Ooh, I gotta think. I almost want to pull out my Letterboxd and just be like,
you have Letterboxd?
Of course I have Letterboxd.
Oh, how did we not talk about this?
Wait, okay. We'll have to get into it. Let me pull mine out and figure out what I've got. I feel like with modern movies, I live in the anything that's shot on film, anything that looks, I don't know, I like really campy comedy movies too. Bottoms was so good. I loved Bottoms.
Bottoms was really good.
Bottoms was one of my favorite movie theater experiences ever. I had a great time.
Wow, that's great. I also had a really good time. I really love a very over-the-top horror movie.
Yeah.
Barbarian is one of my favorite.
I love Barbarian.
And I feel like you might know this about me because I feel like everyone just happens to know this about me because I talk about it and don't shut up about it. But Lady Bird is my number one. It's my favorite.
I love Greta Gerwig.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. This is going so well. All right. So what we just learned from that is that your movie taste is stellar,
Great.
and that we need to follow each other on Letterboxd.
Yes, period.
And if the girls listening want to follow you, where can they follow you?
I'm on everything that you could ever think of. I'm either Zach Benson or Bacchus Ensign, pretty much everywhere.
Amazing. Amazing. Yeah. Okay. Now for the real hard-hitting questions. Fuck, marry, kill Zendaya, Mike Feist, and Josh O'Connor.
Okay. I feel like you have to marry Zendaya.
Yeah.
There's no way that you can't.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
It's like financially irresponsible to not marry Zendaya.
Right.
It would just like not be great for your future.
Yes, Tom Holland has the right idea.
Exactly.
He's onto something.
I've known Mike Feist for longer. Personally, we're good friends. No, because he was in Dear Evan Hansen, and I was like a theater gay for like a period of my life. So shout out to Mike Feist. He would probably be the fuck, I guess.
Okay.
And then I'm sorry, Josh O'Connor. I just met you in this movie, so
right. And someone has to be killed.
Process of elimination. I've known you the least.
Now, if you had to answer the same question, but for the characters they play in Challengers, would anything change?
I would fuck all three of them.
Perfect. Perfect. I would say I'm about the same. I'm exactly the same, I think. But if we're talking their characters from the movie, I would marry Mike Feist because Zendaya, that was a marriage of manipulation and unhappiness. So... And then I would still kill Josh O'Connor because he seemed a little stinky.
Yes, legitimately, the stinkiest man in that film.
Genuinely stinky. We're gonna talk about the movie discussion in a second, but I think one thing we needed to see was him brushing his teeth at least once.
We did not see that. Did we see a shower? He was in a locker room at one point.
So we can assume he showered, maybe.
Maybe.
I hope.
I don't know.
Anyway. Let's get into Now Brewing, which is a luxury coffee discussion and review segment. Now Brewing, in today's episode, we're trying multiple drinks from Jirani Coffeehouse in Manassas, Virginia. This is a very cute and quaint little coffee house by the train tracks in Old Town Manassas. If you are in that area, I highly suggest going just for the vibes, but I would suggest going for the drinks too. So we're going to talk a little bit about what we got and if we liked it or not. So Zach, what did you get?
I got a beautiful cold brew with some oat milk because I have very basic coffee taste. I'm kind of a get it in my body and let's move on with the day kind of person.
Interesting.
If it's an afternoon, sometimes I'll go for like a chai latte. Yeah. Today I just wasn't feeling that adventurous. Today I was like, you know what? I need to be awake. I need to be alert. Give me that cold brew.
Perfect. And did it do what it came to do?
I am energized. I am excited. I am galvanized. And it's tasty. I'm having a great time.
Good. Yeah, you're almost done. And this is our first live coffee tasting. Yes, usually for my shows, I always like drink the coffee like a week before, or like I have just like a running like list of coffees in my notes app that I'm like, I'll review that next time. Because there's no nice coffee shops by my house. So it's like I can't do a live tasting of it. But this one, we have the coffees right here next to us. So it's a special episode.
Can y'all hear this? Maybe that's ice.
Right.
Hasn't melted yet. It's fresh.
Yeah, it's very fresh. And I got a Samoa cookie latte. And it was just delicious. It's everything you want it to be. It has the coconut, the caramel, the Girl Scout of it all. It did what it needed to do. I mean, it is what they promised. It's a Samoa cookie latte.
Of course. You're a fan of the sweet, I'm assuming.
Am I a Girl Scouts fan?
Pull up in the Sri Lanka.
Yeah, pull up in the green vest. Yeah, it's great. And is that all I have to say about it?
I guess so.
Do you have anything else to say?
No.
Yeah, this was a pretty quick coffee review. Jirani Coffeehouse and the Samoa Latte gets the Nick pick. And what does your cold brew with oat milk?
It gets the Zach's pick.
Good.
There are no words that rhyme with Zach that are possible.
Zach.
I wish I didn't like it so I could call it Zach's whack.
Zach's whack.
That'd be fun.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Okay. Perfect. So Jirani Coffeehouse, it's a go. You should try it out.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and in our next segment, this is the Coffee Thought, which is an outlet dedicated to voice my many incoherent thoughts over a lovely cup of coffee. which we have. So on this Coffee Thought, I want to talk about a specific album that's coming out pretty soon.
Okay.
You look so confused. It's your album.
Oh, okay.
Yes. So for those of you who do not know, Mr. Zach Benson, sitting across from me, is coming out with his second album on May 17th, titled Music for You and Your Friends. So I want to talk to you about just indie pop stardom, the creative process, any fun stories you have about artistry.
Of course.
So yeah, tell us about the album.
Okay. The album is called Music for You and Your Friends. It's a gorgeous 10-track indie pop journey through a 1970s Elton John Beatles filter, I would say. It's got a little bit of that with a little bit of my modern, like, Muna fanboy sort of influences there. I've been working on it since summer 2022.
Wow.
So it's been about a year and a half of, writing songs and making music. I took a little bit of time off to play a lot of Fortnite and Planet Coaster.
I mean, that's just part of the creative process.
Say that.
Yes.
It's a very important part. And it's coming out May 17th, and I'm very, very excited about it.
Amazing. I have had the pleasure of listening to it, and I will be coming out with an episode next week where I review it.
I'm nervous.
Yes. Yeah, you should be worried. No, I'm just kidding. You can probably already guess I will have a lot of praise for this album. It is lovely. It is wonderful. It is just, I was living for it. I was about to crash my car.
Don't do that.
Well, if you're listening in the car, you can't help it. And for me, it was, you had like a list of artists that you said inspired it, or it sounds similar to. Mm-hmm. And for me, it was almost like a mix of My Chemical Romance at the very beginning.
Slay.
And then it went to a place of Olivia Rodrigo.
Ooh, okay.
You kind of had the album has that like kind of rock element to it, but it still stays within pop. It's just lovely. And the opening to the album, Music for You and Your Friends, the title track, is one of my favorites off the album. The opening is so beautiful. It kind of has like that, I don't know music terms that well, so it's gonna be weird talking about your album next week, but it has like the piano chimes and like chords and everything. It reminded me of Welcome to the Black Parade.
Sure. Yeah.
And in the best way. It was just, I was living for it. So talk a little bit more about like what it's like to perform live and how that is.
Yeah. I've been performing live either in bands or by myself since I was in like middle school. Mm-hmm. Like, it's been a hot second of me getting in front of crowds and screaming into a microphone or dancing around a little bit. It comes very second nature to me at this point. Like, I really just love, it's my favorite part of being an artist, like getting to make the music is one thing, but actually performing it in front of people and getting that real-time response is like such a different beast.
Yeah.
I'm a huge fan. Love performing live.
Am I a live performance fan?
Am I a live performance fan?
Yes. I have had the pleasure of watching you perform live quite a few times now.
Yeah.
And
both in Richmond, right?
A couple times in Richmond, and then one time a long time ago in DC at Songbird Birds.
Yes. Yes.
Wait.
Sorry.
The first time I saw you?
Unlocked a memory right there.
Yeah. That was like during your Humidity and Best Friends Basement, like prom era.
Yeah.
I listened to that in high school and like, oh my gosh, I'm graduating college now. And
that's
I
so
remember
weird.
like discovering those songs and I was like, what is this? And then you were like in Virginia and I was like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. And just every time I've watched you perform live, you just like light up and you're such a good like host. In a weird way. I know it's weird to say about like someone performing, but you're such a good host to like everyone that's come to watch you. You're so funny and like just electrifying. And I've heard a few of these songs live at one of your performances, and they are great. And one thing I love about your music is that it sounds just like it does when you're performing live, which is one thing like about artists. I'm like, I love this song, but it was nothing like when I heard it live for like, Beyonce or something like that. Wow, I'm comparing you to Beyonce. Wow.
You know what? I'll take it.
Yeah. But yeah, you just like have a way to like translate your live performances to the song, which, it just makes the song so special. But also, if people go to see you live, they get that extra little something. It's just always a fun time. If people want to see you live coming up, can they do so?
No,
Oh,
I don't have anything planned for this summer yet.
perfect.
But yeah, the album's coming out in 2 weeks from when we're talking right now. So I'm in big like album promo, get everything done mode, and then as soon as that starts to slow down, I'm gonna start booking shows for hopefully late summer, early fall. It's also because this for some reason has turned into my like personal travel year. So I'm
Oh,
like going around the world right now.
oh my gosh, international tour?
International. Maybe I'll do a performance in Italy when I'm visiting my brother over the summer.
Yes,
And by
that's
that I mean
amazing.
you'll probably find me just like drunk in a karaoke bar somewhere.
Hey,
Screaming
that's a
something.
performance. That's a performance.
Exactly.
What led you to music creation? Because fun fact, you're a communications major as well, so we are
Yes.
kind of the same vein. So what's the difference between us?
Who
No,
are we? What
yeah.
is it? I started making music in like middle school, high school. I was a drummer first, played
Oh,
in a bunch of different bands. I would also go and do the school musicals and write my own songs just on acoustic guitar. It's just sort of been the hobby that I always had, playing music in bands. I always thought about like some people played like travel baseball or travel soccer or whatever in high school, and I did like travel music and
that's so
performed in
cool.
bars and stuff. Once I got to college, I had this weird notion that I needed to be a real adult and get a degree and,
Mhm.
sort of give it up for a second. And then after a year of not making music, I was like, get me out of here. I need to
Yeah,
do this. Finish the degree, obviously, because adulthood,
yeah. Stay in school.
Of course, stay in school, everybody. But on the side, started teaching myself music production because that was all I could really do in a dorm room.
Right.
I couldn't bring a drum set in there.
Yeah,
Wasn't about to be a drummer again.
yeah.
And that's when I made like that first EP and did Kissing as the Cars Pass By and all that. And it's just sort of been like a very slow, gradual, like let me write a few songs and do an open mic night. And then someone wants me to open up for them in DC. Let me go do that. And
Yeah.
now someone else wants to help make a music video. So let's do that. Someone wants to do an interview. And it just like slowly snowballed into what I'm doing now, which is talking about movies and an album. And it's going to come out on vinyl, which I never thought would happen. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's just been a very slow, gradual process to where we are now. A lot of baby steps
Yeah,
over the
yeah.
last
And
yeah, it's been about 6 years, so 6 years.
wow, 6 years. That's amazing. And yeah, it's been so crazy to just like watch it all happen. Your first album, if you are listening to this and you're really excited for the second one, I recommend you go listen to the first one too.
Yes.
It is so beautiful, and there are so many moments I love. The Timothy Chalamet outro, how could we forget it?
A moment in time.
Yes, and then there was an EP a few
Mhm.
years later, which was also just amazing.
Thank you.
Scorpio is such a special song. I love
You
that one.
love an ending track.
Oh my gosh, are those all ending tracks?
Those were both the ending
Oh, well,
tracks.
obviously the
Well,
outro, yeah.
your fave from the new one's the first track, so an intro and an outro king.
Yeah, wow.
Love
I
that.
do love like oh my gosh, American Requiem. It all comes back to the outro,
Stop.
but that's a good intro.
That I was talking about crashing cars. Very much almost got into an accident listening to it the first
I'm
time.
not a Crashing Cars fan.
Pull up to the auto dealership.
Right. What? Why do you make music?
Ooh. I think it is the thing that I've done the longest and the most in my life. It's the thing that I find to be the most therapeutic.
Mm,
I I am in my own life not necessarily closed off, but it takes me a second to sort of open up and, be vulnerable with people, whereas I think songwriting is the thing that helps me get out all of my demons or whatever it is. And
mhm,
even when I'm not necessarily, this happened a few times on this album, like I don't necessarily know that I'm going through something or
mhm.
know how to put it into words, but I know how to make it into a song. And it helps me process just the things that I'm going through. It's
Wow.
always sort of been that. Even if I wasn't putting out music, I know I would be, writing songs and making music still,
Yeah.
even just for myself. So,
Yeah, and I think that's what makes it so good is that like you're doing it for you, and like I know some people could call it selfish, but I think no, but let me get to the point. But I think like the best art comes out of like us kind of helping ourselves.
Yeah.
Because that's why I started this podcast and everything. And I remind myself like, oh, I'm doing this like because it like helps me talk about things that I'm passionate about, helps me feel like creative and everything. So I think that's what makes art really great. Is that, you know, you're doing it for you, you're doing it to like let out something, it's therapeutic. And that's what makes your music so good. And that's why I love it. And it's very like so much tea and lots of fun stuff, especially this new album. There's so much like vulnerable moments you have with the audience, which when I first heard it, I was so shocked. But it's so beautiful and you like turn it into something like really special.
Thank you.
Yes, of course. What else would you like to share about the album?
Well, in talking about being vulnerable, a lot of the album I actually wrote as like a thought exercise of instead of writing from my own perspective about a situation, I was going to be writing from the other person's perspective, if that makes sense. So a song like White Lies is a song about, you know, holding things in a relationship and having, you know, sort of the color drained out of it because you're not being 100% truthful. And that song I kind of wrote from my partner's perspective because that's
you.
Yeah, because that's kind of who I am, or who I was, I guess. I've gotten a little bit better with like saying what I mean in situations, but you know, sometimes when a thing is really good, you don't want to talk about like the little things that make you upset. So you kind of hold that in.
Yeah.
And it just makes things feel tense when they don't need to be. So that's what Why Lies is about. I wrote it from his perspective about like, hey, say what you mean. Like, let's not hold things back, you know?
Wow, I did not. That is so cool.
Yeah.
That's like so creative.
Yeah.
I would have never thought of something like that. I mean, you don't have to answer this. We can cut this out if you want to.
No, let's get into it.
Is that what like water is?
Water is about water's actually about a friend of mine. It's not from it's not really my own story. I had a friend who would text me about like this older guy that he was seeing, and the way that he was describing it, I could sense that the partner, the older guy, thought of it as like a hookup, while my friend saw it as maybe something a little bit more. Yeah. And so I kind of put myself in their shoes and like wrote the song Water about like a power imbalance in a relationship, which I feel like in the queer community is a little all too real, especially in like younger queer experiences, sort of trying to find love in not necessarily the best places. You know, you hear a lot of stories about people like being super young and going online trying to find older people to be with.
Yeah, because that's kind of what they're forced to do. They want those natural experiences, but you know, obviously can't get them like, you know, straight people can, so they have to go to like kind of like unnatural places to get that. So that's really cool. I love hearing just like where these songs are coming from, like and it's like a lot of different perspectives and everything. And you know, it's a well-known fact that like you write and sing your songs for like a queer audience. What's that like?
It's great.
It's fun.
I love it. I don't know. I think in the beginning when I was first making music, I was really nervous to put like same-sex pronouns in my songs or like make them explicitly about like a queer experience because like I said, I came from this background of playing drums in bands with a lot of other like straight dudes, and when I was writing songs in those bands, I was writing them for the lead singer who was always like a straight guy. So if I was ever writing a song in high school or anything, it would always be very gender neutral, not very vulnerable, a little bit more generic. So when I finally started writing music, it took me a second to, you know, feel comfortable about expressing my whole truth in those songs.
Right.
And now I think I'm at a place where I'm just like, let's talk about it. Whatever.
Yes.
And it's also like, it comes from performing live and seeing people and hearing stories of people being like, this song really helped me through XYZ. And it's usually like, you know, coming out or whatever it may be. So
yeah, and that's incredible. I love to hear stories like that. Do you like this album?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
Now, speaking of queer experiences and whatnot, I think it's time we get into this movie.
Let's do it. I'm so excited.
But first, let's take a quick break. Zach Benson wants you to feel the indie pop star fantasy with his new album, Music for You and Your Friends, out May 17th. You can stream or purchase the 10-track album digitally, as well as the limited vinyl pressing that includes a bonus track, the Charlie song Lullaby. If you'd like to pre-order the vinyl for yourself, or if you'd like to pre-save the digital album, you can do so by visiting ZachBensonMusic.com. That's Zach with an H. Again, ZachBensonMusic.com. Now showing our feature ideological analysis and critical film review segment by yours truly and guest, we are now showing Challengers. Challengers, directed by Luca Guadagnino, centers around the long-standing relationships, rivalry, and romance of 3 tennis players. Tashi Duncan, played by Zendaya, is a tennis legend turned wife and coach to Art Donaldson, played by Mike Feist. As Art's famous athletic career begins to hit a low point, Tashi signs him up to a Challenger event, hoping to reignite his career. To Art's surprise, he finds himself playing against his ex-best friend, also Tashi's ex-boyfriend, in a make-or-break match. It is not just about tennis. What were your thoughts about this movie?
So to put you in the perspective here,
yes,
I saw this movie on Thursday. It was late at night, and we had to run like several errands afterwards because my boyfriend's whole family was coming over. Mm-hmm. So the movie ended. We rushed out. I didn't have time to process it, but the entire next day, I could not stop thinking about this movie.
It has that effect.
It does have that effect. I ended it, not, again, like, no immediate spoilers. I didn't love the ending initially, so I kind of left it being like, okay. And then did my errands, woke up the next morning. For some reason, my entire perspective shifted. I was like, I love this film.
Yeah.
I don't know. I thought it was a lot smarter than maybe I initially realized or thought about.
Yeah, I kind of had a similar experience. When I first watched it, I really loved it.
Yeah.
And the ending, also not to get like right into spoilers, we'll do a spoiler lift a little bit in. Mm-hmm. Initially, the ending I did not like.
Me neither.
But I think it's one of those endings where it's like, okay, that's all you needed to see of this story. Like, there's no kind of like afterwards, like, this is what happens. Like, this is who won and who did this and what happened to these 2 people. Mm-hmm. It's just like, that's what you came to see. And I don't think people really know, like, I mean, I'm speaking for myself. I don't think I really knew like what I was coming to see. So mm-hmm. when it ended the way it ended, I was a little surprised. And also, I guess I was reading so hard into the movie, but it's really like simpler than it seems. Mm-hmm. It kind of tells you like earlier on in the film, like what's going on. There's that moment on the beach with Zendaya and the 2 boys where she basically kind of like lays out what like the metaphor of the movie is. And
yeah.
Tennis is so much more than just hitting a ball with a racket. It's a relationship. And, she is so passionate about tennis and so invested in her matches because it is like a relationship. And that's like what good tennis is. That's what's entertaining. Mm-hmm. And from that point on, that's kind of what the movie's about. And I like that they did not try to overcomplicate things. The movie just stayed true to like what it promised the audience early on. So yeah, that was very overarching. But like, what were some specific scenes that you liked?
So like you said, the scene on the beach and then the scene immediately afterwards with the hotel room.
Yes.
I think that could have just been the entire movie because that was exactly what the movie was, you know? I loved those 2 scenes. I think they perfectly encapsulated Zendaya's character. She, I think, is a lot more manipulative than she lets on throughout the entire movie. And that hotel room scene where she makes them kiss and then just sits back and watches was exactly what the movie was, which I loved. My other favorite scene, which I don't know why this is my favorite scene, is when Art and Tashi were in the Applebee's parking lot and they had their first kiss since, them being teenagers.
Yes.
I loved that scene because for me, that perfectly encapsulated Art's character,
Yeah.
which is that even though he's, trying to be a pro tennis player, I don't think he's a very driven character.
He was never very good.
He's not very good at tennis. He is just kind of like, okay, I'm going to play this sport and whatever.
Yeah.
Like, I could do this, or I could go, like, sit with my kid and hang out. Like, he didn't really seem to have any huge ambitions besides just, like, hitting the ball back and forth.
Yeah.
And I think it was perfectly encapsulated with the fact that their first date and their first kiss was at Applebee's.
Yeah.
For some reason, that just really sent me. Like, as I was thinking about it, I was like, yeah, Art is definitely, like, not the greatest, not necessarily not the greatest guy, but, not someone that you really need on your team.
Uh-huh.
And he took her to Applebee's.
Well, so I found out, I don't know how true this is or not, but I just heard it from someone when we were talking about the movie that it's kind of like a tradition, like for tennis players to go to Applebee's after their matches because it's the only thing that's still open.
Really?
I don't know how true that is, but I mean, I think it works both ways where it's like, yeah, it kind of was like, it kind of did resemble their relationship a bit that they were just kissing in the Applebee's parking lot. But yeah, I really like that scene as well. I would say my favorites are the beach and then the hotel room scene. I also really love when the two boys are kissing and then Zendaya just kind of like leans back and watches. I think that is very representative of her character and kind of just sets her up for the rest of the film. And I like the Applebee scene, of course. I think my favorite scene though, which I can't say much without spoiling it, happens when kind of like in one of the in-between scenes, because this movie kind of operates on a very long timeline. So it's kind of like one of the in-between moments when Zendaya meets with Josh O'Connor's character and it's really windy outside. And I won't say what goes down between them, but they are like talking in a parking lot and like arguing back and forth. The soundtrack goes crazy, which we'll talk about that.
We do need to talk about that.
Yes. And it's so windy that they almost like the wind is visible. And I love that you can see like everything just kind of like blowing around. I think it just adds like this visual element to the scene that's like really interesting. And a very strange decision was made in this scene to lower the frame rate. So it was kind of just like, stop motion. It was showing Zendaya like turning back to Josh O'Connor. And it was very dramatic. And yeah, I just fell in love with that moment because she makes a very crazy decision in that moment. And I watched Zendaya's press for this film, and she was talking about how attracted she is towards characters that are very complicated, and you could easily call them like a bad person. But she loves bringing that extra depth to the character. That's like, well, maybe they're not such a bad person. She did it on Euphoria, and I think she definitely did it here. And I think that scene was very representative of kind of like that drive for Zendaya acting wise. Yeah.
I agree with that. And I think it's so easy to read into that scene as a selfish decision that Tashi makes for herself. But I think, to go back to that first initial scene, I think she knows how to get what she wants out of these two characters. And her doing what she does in that scene is her way to not only get her husband to play the best tennis that he can play, but also to get Josh O'Connor's character to, be his best competitor.
Right. And if that means like being a better player than him or like giving the game to Mike Feist's character, that's shown in the movie, but it's just she's playing both sides of the court.
Yes, exactly.
Not to talk about tennis. Let's talk a bit about Zendaya and her performance more, because I want to say, let's FedEx Express overnight her the Oscar trophy.
Say that.
Now.
Say that.
Now. This was, an incredible performance. And I really do mean that. Like, I would like her to win the Oscar for leading actress. And I just think like looking at her portfolio and everything, it's just unbelievable like that she played any other character. She was so believable as Tashi Duncan, like, and I watched it a second time too.
Oh.
And when I was sitting there, I was like, I can't believe this is the same person that played Rue on Euphoria or Shake It Up Girl. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, so I just think her range here was incredible. And I think I decided that one really good way to tell if acting is good is how they play like a neutral scene where they're very kind of like subtle and relaxed,
Mm.
not high emotions. Zendaya is really good at performing like kind of these neutral emotions, like kind of just very low key, uh, in a very believable way. She doesn't need these high like intensity moments to really showcase her acting skills.
I agree. I think the thing that really stood out to me too, and this is for all three of the leads, how well they're able to portray an 18-year-old in this movie and have it be believable.
Right.
And then also a, 30 something year old, however long, it's like 13 years later, right?
Yeah, I think it's 13 years.
Yeah, so they're like 31, 32
Yeah.
throughout the movie, and they have to portray, I think it's like 4 different ages throughout the whole thing,
Yeah.
right?
It's a lot.
And they were believable every single time.
Yeah.
Like from body language to how they spoke. I think their hair had a lot to do with it, but
Yeah.
I saw a side by side of Mike Feist as the 18-year-old and the 31-year-old on Twitter, I think. And I was like, how did they change his face shape? Like his face was different.
Right.
It was so strange.
Yeah, I just think they did portray that really, really well. And I think like anytime a movie tries to like have, the same actor do like a crazy time jump with their character, they always kind of like overdo it. And they overdo it or they underdo it. One of the two. But this one did a great job of just kind of like walking that line in between. Let's talk a little bit more about Pat, played by Josh O'Connor, and Art, played by Mike Feist. What do you think about kind of not only their performances, but the relationship between those two characters?
I loved them. I wanted them to kiss even more. I can't believe they only kissed one time.
I know.
They should have kissed 18 more times in that movie.
Yeah.
And they had the opportunity. So many times.
They did. There were a few moments where I was like, what are they doing?
I know.
But yeah, I thought they both did a stellar job acting. This is the first time I've seen either of them in anything. So this was a great introduction to both of them. And in terms of like the relationship between those two characters, I was so not into it, but like I was just so intrigued by it.
I was too.
There was that moment where they were telling Tashi kind of like their history, and they were talking about like, has there ever been anything sexual between them? And there kind of has. Yeah, and I think a lot of people were going into this movie thinking it was like a gay movie, queer movie, and I think it was. It just did not show that overtly.
Yeah.
It was just kind of like referenced, and I think the whole movie was kind of like a allegory or metaphor or whatever for a queer experience.
Yeah, 100%. Especially, I came away from this movie being like, I feel like Art and Patrick had a stronger relationship than Patrick and Tashi or Art and Tashi. Like,
Yeah.
I think the two boys had a stronger feeling of both love for each other and then disgust for each other than any of the other pairings in that relationship.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and I think it was interesting how the characters spent time apart from each other for like a majority of the film, and we got to see side by side like how they were as teenagers and how close they were, and also like what it was like when kind of Tashi made her way into their relationship. And they say in the movie like she was a homewrecker, and she kind of was, but I think it's time to lift the spoilers. So if you haven't seen the movie, we're going to talk about spoilers for a little bit. You've been warned. Okay. And really, she just wanted to see some good tennis. And she said that at one point during the movie.
Yeah.
But like her whole character's motivation is like she just wants to watch a good tennis match, and she wants them to be the best like athletes they can be. So I thought that was an interesting motivation.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
I think honestly, like in thinking of that, I think that's the entire point of the movie, honestly. Like,
yeah.
Not that I see Zendaya's character as like a beard for both of these characters. I don't think that either of them are like 100% gay or anything.
Yeah.
But both of them definitely were using Tashi for their own gain. Either
Yeah.
like Art's case, he wanted her as a tennis coach, and he liked the proximity to her because she's, in her youth, such a important figure in tennis.
Right.
So he liked being close to her. And I think Patrick had the exact same motivation. He just wanted to use her to gain uh tennis notoriety, I guess.
Yeah, because she has that stature and everything.
Mhm.
As you know, she was a former tennis legend, like a young star, and she had the injury
Mhm.
in that one scene.
Which that scene was insane to
Yeah,
me. I don't love gore in movies, and when they showed the close up of her leg breaking, I said, "Is this movie for me? I don't know about this."
yeah, they like really showed it.
They
It
were
was,
like, "Y'all want to see a leg break in real time,
yeah,
close up?"
I don't even know how they like got that.
It was insane.
They must have just had like a fake limb where they moved the muscles around. But yeah, they just showed it very explicitly. But one thing I noticed about the movie that I really liked is that even after her injury, Tashi in a way was still playing tennis,
Yeah.
and she was still like kind of playing like a social game of tennis between these two men that was like a decade in the making. And I think that's just like a really cool concept, and just a cool like trope where it's like, legendary athlete, has to step away from the court and but finds a way to still like play the game off the court.
Mhm.
I think that's really cool and that's very creative. So that was yeah, I like that part.
Agreed. I think there should be more movies about tennis, period.
Yeah.
I don't understand why tennis hasn't been used as a metaphor in more movies because it's the perfect, like, you're volleying back and forth. And okay, something I really loved about this movie too is that there's a lot of time jumps, and
Mhm.
the fact that the tennis match that's being played in quote unquote present day, which is
Yeah,
2019,
which was a little confusing.
which, yeah, but the fact that, like, what was happening in that tennis match was directly correlating to their relationship and how uh they had a leg up on Tashi, I guess, the
Yeah.
entire time. Like, Patrick was up in that first match, and so they decided to show Patrick and Tashi falling in love and in college and their relationship. And then second match, Art was up, so they were showing how he and Tashi started falling for each other, and then he had the leg up. And then last round it was back and forth, and so I just liked that correlation there.
I did not notice that
No
at
way.
all. Like not one bit.
That was the first, because immediately after they showed that Patrick won that tennis match and then got Tashi's number in that first scene,
Oh.
they went back to present day and they were like, and Patrick wins round one of this tennis match. And I was like, I loved that.
Wow.
It was good to me.
That's really wow. I
Okay,
did
I'm a
not pick up
movie.
on.
Start my podcast right now.
I know you're gonna be on like a competing podcast with me.
Ready
Hey,
to fight.
actually get out.
Challengers is just about us right now.
It's just us volleying back and forth about movies. That's really cool. We have not talked about the soundtrack yet. What did you think?
The way that I've been listening to it just in my free time.
Yeah.
Yeah, times 10. Great song. Love that. I loved, did you, okay. Last night was also SNL. Dua
Yes.
Lipa was the host, and they had a Challenger sketch.
Oh,
Did you see
really?
it?
I did not.
Okay, it's literally Dua Lipa is dating a man, and she has this collection of, like, I don't even know what it's called, but little dolls. And
Yeah.
so it's her forcing her new boyfriend to compete with, like, her doll, played by Bowen Yang, and it's like just a challengers, what's it called? And at one point in the sketch, the soundtrack starts playing, and he's like, "Is this the Challenger soundtrack?" And he goes, "Yes, it's very stressful but very horny." And I said, "That is exactly the vibe."
That sums it up.
Yeah.
I loved how like this sounds like a read, but it's not. It's a compliment. I love how the music did not fit in. Like
Sure.
it was just kind of like gave you whiplash a bit. Like it would just be like a very and this music I am not the music person,
Hit me with
but
it.
it was just kind of like club music.
Very like deep house,
Yes,
all of that. Yeah.
those are the terms. And it would just like start playing like in the middle of someone's sentence in a scene where they're talking about how their day was. This like deep house music just comes in hard and it's like just like blasting the speakers in the theater. I loved it.
I had a great time with that.
Yeah.
I did have an issue. It was the scene in Tashi's dorm with her and Patrick right before she breaks her leg in the tennis match.
Mhm.
Like the music came in halfway through their fight, which also I loved that scene because I realized it was a one take, and that was an insane scene to have be a one take. But halfway through that music came in and they're still fighting, and I was like, someone put on captions right now because I have no idea what they're talking about.
Yeah, I did have a little trouble like hearing them during that scene, but I was just kind of like, oh, I guess I get the gist here. Like, he doesn't want to talk about tennis, but that's all you can talk about with her. Like, this is all about tennis for her.
Yeah.
So I really liked that scene too. And then the leg snap happened right afterwards. And so that's another thing in the movie that I thought was interesting was kind of like the responsibility of each character, and how like Pat kind of interrupted her like exercising and like her pre-workout, and she got injured, and Art was the only one there for her, so he kind of like reaped the rewards of like being with Tashi, which is what both of them were kind of like competing against each other for. But did he really get the reward? Because then, later in life, he just gets complacent with his tennis matches. And, eventually, spoilers again, Pat gets with Tashi, and it was just back and forth between all these characters, like a game of tennis, which I thought was really cool. And they all shared kind of like different responsibilities in the plot and the bad things that were happening. And they were like stakeholders for Tashi's character, which I thought was interesting, seeing how she was the one kind of controlling them.
Yeah, agreed.
The cinematography was amazing.
Loved.
There were so many really cool shots towards the end, and I love that they saved the cool shots for the end. They kind of just like broke out like all the tricks during that last sequence, which was like what is that tennis term where it's like neck and neck, set match, point break,
match point. Wii tennis knowledge just came back to me.
Nope. Yep.
So crazy.
Match point. They kind of broke out all the stops. There was a really unique POV shot where the camera was the ball.
Yeah.
Which I've said on this podcast before that I hate POV shots, but I loved this. And there were also really cool shots from like underneath the court, and you got to just see like Art and Pat suspended in the air hitting the ball with the rackets. I thought that was really cool, and I love that they saved this for the end because it just elevated that last little sequence of tennis and made it special compared to like all the other tennis we saw in the movie. So I think that just that decision made was really good. Yeah. Anything else?
I agree. Well, Luca, as a director, I love the fact that he can make sort of whatever setting the movie is in feel like a place that you need to be in.
Yeah.
Did you watch Bones and All?
I did.
I loved Bones and All, first of all. And I love the fact that it was shot, it's in the Midwest, right? Like very like sprawling fields, a lot of nothingness. But like he shoots it so beautifully that I'm like, I want to go to there.
Yeah,
I don't know why.
Literally just about to talk about Luca as a director.
Yeah.
So I love that you brought that up. And you just like gave words to like what I was thinking about, just that feeling of like I need to be where they are right now. And I think we all felt that after Call Me by Your Name. We're all like, I want to be in Italy in the 1980s. But there was one scene towards the start of the movie where they were just like sitting in a locker room waiting for the match to start. It was Tashi and Art.
Yeah.
And there was just like this soft, like warm lighting coming through the window. And it was, if I was there in person, I'd be like, this is a horrendous locker room. I can't believe they put me up here. But they just like Luca made it so romantic. And I think that's the word to describe like what he does to these scenes is just creates an environment of like romance, and not always like the warm and fuzzy kind of romance, sometimes like the kind of romance that makes you anxious and make you like a little bit queasy. So I think he did that well. And another thing I love about him as a director is that most of his films that I've seen are queer allegories. And I think he always has a really unique way of like adapting a queer narrative to like something else. Bones and All, he adapted it to to cannibalism work, which I know there was a different writer for that movie and for this one, but he definitely brings it out of the script. So I thought that was cool.
No, the podcast I was listening to, Las Culturistas, shout out Bowen Yang, love him so much.
Yes.
Their review of Challengers was that one of the podcasts, Matt Rogers, who's the other podcast host, read the screenplay for it and said that if anyone else were to direct it, I think that queer subtext would have been like completely skipped over.
Yeah.
Like you could direct this movie almost as a comedy because there's a lot of like really funny lines in this movie.
Yeah.
And a lot of funny situations that happen. And I think, you know, with another director, this movie could have just been like a sports movie.
Tennis movie.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Or it could have been like played for laughs almost. But
right.
There's definitely, and it comes back to the soundtrack. It comes back to Luca's like history with filmmaking and how a lot of these movies have that queer subtext. There's so much like underlying tension in every single scene. Like even something where they're just like eating churros back and forth. Like you're holding your breath, like waiting for something to happen.
In my seat, I'm like, so are they gonna kiss or? But yeah, I think he really brings that out well. He gives like this aura of romance and also dread to so many of his movies. Mm-hmm. Do you have anything else to say about the movie?
Loved the movie.
Loved the movie.
Loved the movie. I just bought a pickleball set. And I'm very excited to live out my Challenger's dream.
Well, please be sure to stretch and do the pre-workout fully. Do not let anyone interrupt you. Yeah, and don't let your partner manipulate you to being a better star. I mean, maybe that might make
honestly, I'd be a
match. Yeah.
If we could have like a 10-year relationship where suddenly I'm a pro tennis player and we're doing advertisements and living in fancy hotels most days of the year, you know what? Let's do it. Why not?
Sorry to interrupt. I just thought of one other thing that came to me on the second time around of the movie was the Game Changers like billboard or whatever it was covering that one building where it was Art and Tashi standing in front of that car. It was like a big advertisement. At the very beginning of the movie, Tashi was like kind of reworking the design of that billboard. And originally she was like kind of out of the picture and it was more about Art and it was just Game Changer singular. And she like super aggressively like wrote in the S and like underlined it and then brought her closer to the picture. That was something I noticed on the second time around that I was like, that is really cool. It kind of is showing how like the tennis fans or tennis culture is kind of like forgetting about her and how she wants to be like more involved in everything. And I think in a lot of ways it sparked her to make some of the decisions she made in this film or so close to this challenger match. Because right after that, she was like, Art, I think you should play a challenger match at Phil's Tire Center. Yeah. And he was like, okay. So I think she was kind of like felt undermined in a way, which sparked her to, you know, kind of set up this chance encounter, quote unquote, chance encounter with Pat. So that was one interesting thing you reminded me of. But yeah, anything else about the movie?
I think that's all my thoughts for right now. Shout out to Zendaya.
Yes.
I think that's my big underlying, what I wanted everyone to take away from this movie is just, that is an actor. Capital A.
She was great.
You know what's crazy too? Is that this is her first leading role in a movie.
Really?
Think about it. Like Euphoria, she was the lead in that, but that's a TV show.
Right.
Famously, episodes.
Yes.
This is the first time she's leading a film.
TV show as in episodes.
Yes.
And I feel like this is the first time in a film where we see her in a serious role. Yeah. You know, Euphoria, obviously we saw her do something serious, very serious. But this one was like I said, kind of lower intensity performance-wise. But I think she got to channel so much more of her energy just into that subtle dialogue and like her facial expressions were really cool. Yeah.
Love.
It was Zendaya.
It was Zendaya. We're proud of you.
Woo! All right. What's your rating?
How do you usually rank?
I do the Nick.
Yes.
Mix or pick.
Well, this is so obvious. It's a Nick pick.
Yeah. I also have to give it a Nick pick. And this is my little write-up. Challengers is a cinematic powerhouse. The performances, specifically from Zendaya, are electric yet subtle and completely award-worthy. The soundtrack is distracting, somehow in the best of ways, and ignites audience members. And finally, the film offers a compelling narrative with complicated characters that are held back only by a somewhat confusing timeline. I highly encourage this movie. If you have not seen it yet, go to the tennis court and talk it out like, yeah. You recommend it? I would assume.
Yes, I would recommend it. Run to the nearest theater. I did hear that they are trying to push it onto Prime very quickly.
Yes.
I think they should keep it in the theater for a few more months.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do that.
I think, and a lot of people are talking about this movie. A lot of people are interacting with it. But also watch it on Prime. If that's your easiest way to watch it, go ahead. And a lot of people have access to Amazon Prime. So a lot of people will watch this movie, which I'm very happy about because it needs to be seen. Also, watch Bones and All.
Say that.
Yes, because
I would put an asterisk by that, though, if you are a crazy person.
Bones and All is so disturbing.
It's gross. It's pretty gross.
But it kind of like, I feel like it weeds people out right away. There's that one opening scene where she bites that finger off.
Iconic.
So yeah, you'll know right away if that movie is for you or not. But it does get worse after that. Trust me.
Say that. But I loved that film.
Yeah, that movie was kind of just like really kind of brushed over. So go back and watch that if you like challengers. Also, of course, Call Me by Your Name, classic. Suspiria, classic.
I love the new Suspiria. Can I
really?
And I love the old Suspiria, the 77.
Yes.
Love that movie. I think it's so fun and kind of campy. I think the new Suspiria kind of like lost the fun. You know, I think it went a little bit more for like, this is a capital F film.
Yeah,
and I wanted to be a little bit sillier.
It tried to like be that like, I don't like the term, but elevated horror experience, kind of like your Hereditary or Midsummer. I fell asleep during that movie, I think, but I really enjoyed what I saw. It was kind of crazy.
Yeah.
This next segment is Dear Coffee Nick. In this segment, I will be reading some letters from fellow coffee and movie enjoyers about their own coffee and movie opinions, reviews, thoughts, hot takes, or whatever they have to say. So I have a friend here with me that is also going to be replying to these. There's only a few. The first one says, Dear Coffee Nick, Pacific Rim, Black Folgers, Jonah, Special Edition. That's from Jonah. So, Jonah, if you're listening to this, I would like to know what you mean by this. Thank you for sending this in. I think it's a haiku.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Thinking about that. Yeah.
What is it? 474 for a haiku?
574. 575.
575. Dear Coffee Nick, Pacific Rim, Black Folgers, Jonah, Special.
No.
Jonah, you were close. Thank you. Do you have anything to say about that one?
Next.
Okay. This next one is from someone special who was our featured guest on the last episode. It says, Dear Coffee Nick, what is your Muppet movie wish list? From Harrison. Once again, Harrison, thank you for talking about Twin Peaks with me on the last episode. And thank you for asking me this question. A lot of you know that I am a Muppets fan, and I am upset by the fact that we don't have more Muppets content. And I have like a little tag on Letterboxd where I write like needs Muppet version. So basically it means that I want to watch this movie with all Muppets, but one of the characters stays human, kind of
that
like
makes sense.
Classic Muppet style. And I famously tagged Challengers as a needs Muppet version.
That makes sense.
But who would you want the human to be?
I think the human is the woman who checks in Patrick at the tennis match, who's like, I saw you play once, and then gives him a bagel.
That is so niche.
That's the one human I want in this movie.
I was going to say Zendaya.
Or, you know who I want it to be? The woman at the hotel checkout counter who yells at Patrick about not being able to stay there because he's poor.
Oh, yeah, that would be funny too. I was also thinking that the one girl that Patrick went on a date with would probably be human.
Yes.
I mean, Patrick and Art are Muppets.
That's true. But that woman seemed a little bit Muppet-ish, even in, not as a human being, but her character.
Do you know that video that's like, do I look like a Muppet?
Do I look like a Muppet? Yes.
And then they're just like nodding. But for other Muppet movie wish lists, one of my favorite ones to use as an example is Fargo. Have you seen Fargo?
I actually haven't.
You would love.
Okay, that's on my list now.
It is a very Midwest movie. It's like a murder mystery. It's kind of like a plot. I'm not describing this well. It needs Muppets in it.
Heard.
But it's really good nonetheless. I also think a disaster movie would be really fun with Muppet.
I would like that.
What do you think?
So my favorite genre of movie is like 90s comedy, campy, silly, goofy. I love a Romy and Michelle's high school reunion.
Yes.
I love a But I'm a Cheerleader. I love a Brady Bunch movie. Like, that's kind of where I live.
Mm-hmm.
So my first immediate thought was Romy and Michelle's high school reunion.
Yeah.
Which, have you seen?
I have not.
That's on your list.
Okay.
It's one of my favorite movies of all time.
I love But I'm a Cheerleader.
Yes. I just watched that again like 2 weeks ago.
Oh, really?
Which I think for the 50th time of my life. But love that film. But I'm a Cheerleader would actually be very good as an all Muppet cast with maybe... Who would be the human in that?
RuPaul or the lady in charge of the...
The lady in charge would be the human, and everyone else would be a Muppet. That's actually way... That's what I'm saying.
I don't have any, original ideas for the Muppets, but I think they need to, do more parodies.
Sure.
I would just love, a Muppets parody, series or something.
Yeah.
There's just so much... The Muppets are disrespected. That's all I have to say.
Period. My favorite ride at Disney World is famously Muppet Vision 3D.
Yes.
Yeah.
I know. Our minds. There's a neural link happening right now. That is all of our Dear Coffee Nicks for today. Thank you for sending those in. And if you would like to send in a letter, please feel free to write Dear Coffee Nick through DM on Instagram or email coffeenicksmoviepics@gmail.com. Zach, I would like to say thank you so much for coming on the show today. It was so fun to talk to you about Muppets, Challengers, your new album coming out May 17th, and all sorts of other things. It was so much fun. Thank you so much.
Thanks for being here. Thanks for having me.
Oh, of course. Is there anything you'd like to share with the audience?
Listen to my gosh darn music, because it's really good.
I can confirm. It is very, very good. And yeah, I just want to say it is just such an honor to have you on the show. You're welcome back anytime.
Yes, please.
And I just appreciate your music. For a long time, I've just loved your music and your performances and everything. You've occupied such a special place in the musical side of my mind and heart, inspiring my creativity. So I just want to thank you for making music for people like me and also making music for yourself, because that's what makes it special.
Period.
Yes.
Thank you. Oh.
Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Coffee Nick's Movie Picks. If you like what you heard, please be sure to give the show a 5-star rating and subscribe on Apple Podcasts. Follow the show's accounts on social media and share the show with your friends. I would greatly appreciate it. Next week, I'll be doing an exclusive review of Zach Benson's Music for You and Your Friends in a special bonus episode. Please be sure to tune in then. Until next time, we'll be discussing what Disney needs to do with the Muppets.
1,000 opinions. Okay, great.
I have 10 million.
Oh, damn.
Thanks again for listening to Coffee Nick's Movie Picks. Our opening theme is Summer Solstice on the June Planet, and our closing theme is I Feel It All So Deeply, both songs by Bail Bonds. Our transition themes are Flow by MK2 and Howling by Gunnar Olsen. Before you go, please be sure to follow the show on social media at Coffee Nick's Movie Picks and give the show the Nick pick by rating it 5 stars on Apple Podcasts. Thanks so much.